The CSV file is one of the most common ways to transport data between different systems. It allows for a level playing field where anyone can process data, including in Excel. You can download data from one system and upload it to another using CSV files, and they're very easy to transport. But how do you efficiently create and read CSV files in C#? Well, one great answer is the CSV Helper library. This highly performant library makes working with CSV files extremely easy. In this video, we're going to look at how to create and read both small and large CSV files. But before we dive in, there's 3 quick things I think you should know. First, if you're interested in improving your C# skills, this channel has tons of content that will help you out. With over 500 videos, there's something here that fits your need. Second, if you want even more free C# resources, go to iamtimcorey.com and go to the resources page, where you'll find even more free resources to help you out. And third, if you do decide that a paid course will help launch you forward faster, I do have a number of them. But not just will you get a great education in C#, you'll also help fund the free content here on this channel, because I want everyone to have a great education in C#, not just those who can afford it. So let's jump on over to look first at the CSV Helper page. So this is the URL, joshclose.github.io/CSVHelper, or you can just Google C# CSV Helper and you'll find it. And this page is really great because not only does it get you started, it also has great documentation. So here's what package to install. Here's how to get started to read a file and the different ways you can read a file, and then write a file and so on. So it's got great documentation to get you started right away. The big deal here is you want that NuGet package. I'll copy that. So let's pull up Visual Studio here, and we're going to create a new project, and we'll create a console application, and we'll call it CSV Demo, and we'll call this CSV Demo App. And we'll do .NET 7 and wait for it to get created. Okay, let's get rid of the boilerplate stuff. We'll save this, and we're going to try and keep everything in just this one file to keep it simple and clean. Let's go to Dependencies and Manage NuGet Packages. We'll go to Browse, and we'll install the CSV Helper. Notice the 152 million downloads. That's really impressive. And the stable version is 30, so it's got a lot of iteration on this to make sure that not just is this a good CSV library, it's a great library. It's a very efficient library, and we're going to see that. Now, I've said CSV about 30 times so far, and maybe you're not quite sure, what does CSV mean? Well, CSV stands for comma separated value. Okay, CSV. So the example here would be, 1 Tim Corey, and I don't know, there's a phone number. There you go. So that's what a comma separated value line would be in a text file. Now, normally the text files end in .csv instead of .txt, but they really are just text files. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and we're going to create a couple of an input and output. So we're going to have string input file equals, I say C temp. I already have a file downloaded, people-100.csv. So what this file is a CSV file. Let me pull it up right here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pull up the website I got it from. So this website here is called datablist.com, and they have sample CSV files for free to download. And the purpose here is for testing. So this is random data. They have 3 different, they have customers, people, and organization. I grabbed the people data set. And notice down here, they have people 100, people 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, and 2 million records in a CSV file. Now, 2 million records in a file is a very large file. It's a very large file. But I have downloaded this people 100 and people 2 million. So I have both of those downloaded. Let me pull that up real quick here. And you can see that we have people 100 right here. It's 11.1 kilobytes. And then people 2 million is 224 megabytes. So that's a very large file. We're going to see how to open that in a little bit. But for now, let's go ahead and create also a string output file. And let's let, I think it's IntelliCode. It's either IntelliCode or it's GitHub Copilot. One of the two is giving me suggestions. It's kind of hard to tell one between the other, but I'm going to change this just to say output or filter people. How about that? There we go. So this is going to be a CSV that does not exist yet. We're going to create this one, and it's going to be a filter from the input we get. Okay, and we do need to have a list of or a model for this. So let's grab the let's go back over here. I'm going to open up people 100. Open up with Excel. You can open up with, whoops, you know what? I am going to open up with Notepad because that gives me a very easy open with Notepad. There we go. That gives me a very easy way to grab that first row, which does have the column headers. So index, user ID, first name, last name, sex, email, phone, date of birth, and job title. Now, there's a few things in here, and I love the fact that they're in here because I didn't want to have a very simple demo that was, easy to do. And so there's some things in here that add some complexity. For example, there's a space here, and there is a space here and a space here. So our titles have spaces in them. And you want to match those up to properties in a model. How are you going to do that? Well, we are going to use, and I could just copy and paste. I've done this before. I could just, go over to my sample project and get, the end result. But I don't want to do that. I want to create it for you. So I'm going to Control-Shift-A, and let's say person model. And we're going to use a little bit of AI to help us out. I'm going to show you how to use this. So I've got my public class, now it's public class, person model, and I'm going to come over here to GitHub Copilot X. We've got that installed. I'm going to ask it. Now, this works different ways depending on when you ask it and how you ask it. You can get a different result every time. So this is going to take some tweaking potentially. But I'm going to say create properties for the following items. And I'll paste in that list. And we'll see if Copilot will create these properties for me. There we go. He has created them. I can say insert, and I hit tab, and it now created the index, user ID, first name, last name, sex, email, phone, date of birth, and job title. Notice date of birth has no spaces, and B is capitalized, even though if we look at what I pasted in there, date of birth, the O and the B were not capitalized. And first name and last name, it has compressed those as well and made sure they are following the normal patterns for C# naming conventions. So really cool stuff here. I do know that this is a string. It guessed at user ID. That makes sense. But I do know it's a string. Next up, what I want to do is if you look at the file, and let's see if I have that still open. I don't have it still open. Let's open it back up here real quick. I'll open with Notepad. I'll grab it. There's your example of why user ID is a string. You have F in there. So, but in this, we also note that since last name isn't going to match up directly with last name, no space, and date of birth, same thing, we've got to figure out a way to map these two so these two match up. Well, the way to do that is by putting something on top, a decorator. And what we want to do is add an attribute, a name attribute above every property that specifies these names. And I paste that list in again. And let's see if Copilot can get this working. It didn't the first time I try it, but did the second time. There we go. It works. So it says, okay, you want name and you want to say user ID, first name, last name. Notice date of birth, lowercase b to o. I can say insert. And then I hit tab to accept those changes. And there we go. Now, name is not being picked up here, but if we do a drop down using CSV Helper, we add that using at the top, and now name is properly being picked up. So we can use AI to really help us create these things very, very quickly. And this is not an AI demo, but I wanted to kind of point out that that's what I did because I didn't want to have to type all this stuff out. And if you have a really big CSV file, that can be really helpful to do quickly. Okay, so now we're back to our program.cs, and we need to add a using directive using CSV demo. So that now we can say list of person model is output records equals new. So we have a list for when we create our filtered people. So what we're going to do is we're going to read in this CSV file. And we're going to pull out only certain records. We'll probably pull out maybe records that start with S. First name starts with S, something like that. And then we'll put just those records into this output file. So we're going to read them into C#. We're going to figure out which ones we want to capture. We want to create a new CSV file out of that. So let's start with the reading. Using var reader equals new stream reader input file. And then we're going to say using var CSV. Notice it's already kind of ahead of me here. And it says, hey, you probably want this. That's kind of cool. That's writing this for me. New CSV reader, which you have to add the using directive for that, and also for cultural info or culture info. So you now have our 3 using directives. So what this is doing is, remember, a using is saying, what it's doing is saying, hey, when you get to the end of the current context you're in, close this correctly. And so we actually have 2 of these that normally be nested. We don't have to nest them anymore. We can just allow them to close at the end of our file. So this way they don't leak memory. Var records equals csv.getRecords person model. This right here. So we've opened a new CSV reader from the file, and we said culture invariant culture. Okay, so it's culture independent. All right, so we've read the CSV file, or we've created a connection, a stream connection to our input file, and we have a CSV reader we can then use to say get records of person model. And if you notice in this right here, it says IEnumerable of person model. That's the return type for this get records. So you said, hey, I want it to be in person model. I want those type objects. And I want your read have 1 person model per row. Cool. That's all it really takes. We can do a for each, and GitHub Copilot saying, hey, you probably want to do something like this. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I didn't actually want to do my filter yet. Let's just do a console write line that says record dot first name, record dot last name, just to print out and see we have all of our records. Let's run this and make sure that we're at least reading this file. And it's already done. Like that's the 100 records. It's just done. So very, very quick to pull those up. Now I want to show you something just to kind of illustrate, what's going on here. So if I come down here and I were to say console write line, let's just do a string interpolation and say number of records, and then say records dot count. So, and we need to put our quote at the end. Let's run this. Number of records, 0. Now, why is that? Why do we have 0 records and not 100 records? These are records up here. So we know that it actually processed. So why is it we have 0 records at this point? Well, this comes to why the CSV helper is so efficient, because it did not put all 100 records into memory and leave them there. Instead, what it did with this get records is it did not get the records. It created an IEnumerable with a yield keyword. Now, if you haven't used yield before, I do have a video on this channel that covers yield specifically. It's a bit more of a more complex topic that you might not need that often. So since you don't need it that often, you might forget what it does. But what yield does is it allows us to get one record at a time where you don't have to keep the whole list in memory, you just get the next thing. And then it's that kind of like a forward-looking thing where this for each right here is going to yield every record until there's no more records. So it loops through the whole thing, but it does it one record at a time, and it's not storing those records in this records IEnumerable. They're just kind of passing through, which means that at the end of this curly brace right here, the records are no more. They're gone. Why does this matter? Well, let's come up here and put that's 2,000, 20,000, 200,000, 2 million. So we got 2 million records, right? Now, I'm not going to show this running through the entire thing because that's going to be a lot. But let's do this. We're going to say int I equals 0. This will be our counter. And we'll say I plus plus. So we're just going to kind of count up that number. And we'll put a breakpoint in here after it's run for a little bit. But let's just run this. This is 2 million records being processed. Notice how fast this is flying through a list. I mean, it's going really fast. And if I wait for just a little bit, and I come over here and I put my breakpoint, I right now is almost at 5,000 records. And if we wait just a little bit longer, and kind of give it a few heartbeats, and we hit it again, now we're at 6,800. So this is really cooking. It's really moving fast. And if we come over here to our diagnostic tools, and we look at the memory usage right now, our memory usage is about 15 megabytes, and it's flatlined, which means that we're not getting this, this bouncing up and down. It doesn't always render this box great. We're not getting the bouncing up and down or a staggered stair step of memory usage where it's just kind of blowing out of control. This is still running, by the way. Like we're still going. This is not using a lot of memory. It's still using 15 megabytes. So even though the text file, and let's pull that up and just look at real briefly, that file is 224 megabytes. We have not loaded the entire thing into memory. In fact, our entire memory usage is 15 megabytes, even though we're processing something that's what, almost 10, it's over 10 times that size. So this is very, very efficient. So we grab this again just to, make a point here, and it's now at 220,000 records that have elapsed. So this thing processes records very, very fast. Just kind of point that out there that, this is processing these records and then getting rid of them. It's not keeping them in memory. Now, if you were to do something like this, this is a bad thing. Don't do that. Because what's going to happen is it's going to have to get every record and store it in memory. Let's go back to our 100 people here and run this. Notice number of records, 100. All right. So it has processed 100 records, and it's now complete. We should actually put our console read line at the end. So let's run this again. There you go. So we're using 13 megabytes for just 100 records because of the fact they've put all of them in memory. And if we were to load 1,000 or 10,000, we'd get even larger size. So just so you know, you shouldn't do a to list. Okay, don't do a to list if you can help it. Just do your IEnumerable and then do something with it. Now, in our case, we do want to capture certain records and put them in memory. So we are going to put some in memory. And what we're going to do is say if, and actually the Copilot is saying, hey, you might want to do this, which I can hit tab. And notice we now see record.firstname equals Tim, output add record. It's being a little vain here and saying it. You're probably thinking you were looking for your own record. I'm not. Don't want equals. I want starts with. And let's just say the value is S. Okay, so if the first name starts with S in that record, then I want you to add that to the output record. So our output record list, which is right here, that's our list of person model, that is going to increase the size of our overall usage for our file. But then at the end of it, we can get rid of this record count here because it's not actually counting records. What we can do is, well, let's undo that. And let's say that we want output records count. So we just know if there's any output records to see. And we grab this. There are 8 output records. So there's 8 names that start with the first names that start with the letter S in this file. So now we can do something with these records. In fact, what we're going to do is write them to a new CSV file. And if we come back over here to our temp directory, notice there's only 2 CSV files here. There is no output CSV file. There's no filtered people CSV file. So we're going to create that next. So to create this output record, it does not take a lot of work. In fact, what we're going to do is say using var writer is stream writer. And yeah, GitHub Copilot's really helped me out here. CSV var out is fine. It's create a new writer. And then we're going to say CSV out write records. So what's happening here? We're going to, again, using this using in order to make sure they properly close writer and CSV out. Writer is a stream writer. It's going to stream it out the same way we're streaming it in. So again, very, very efficient. We take our output file, which is this file right here. We create that stream writer and we pass that into the CSV writer, which is okay. I will use this to write to CSV files. And we say write records. And write records takes in an IEnumerable of person model, or a list is a type of IEnumerable. It's or implementation, sorry, of IEnumerable. But write records will take our output records and it will write them to the CSV. That's all we have to do. These 3 lines right there. If we run this, 8 records written, right? We hit enter. We can close out of that again. And we come back over here to our files. We look, we have filtered dash people. If we were to open this up, let's open this up. Let's just use Excel, because why not? There you go. So user ID, there's your user IDs. In fact, let's just make all these columns the correct size. And we see that we have Shelby, Sheila, Stacy, Sean, Shari, Sandra, Steve, and Summer. So we got all the S first names, and here's all their information about what they do. Different types of phone numbers where they really kind of try to throw us at some loops. And that's fine because it processed it, no problem. So there we go. There's how to write to a CSV file. I know I want to save that. If you look at this with Notepad, CSV files look to be simple because just value and then comma. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot more processing that has to be done. And like you saw, there's a lot of ways you can get burned with inefficiencies. And so the CSV helper just makes sure that you don't get burned by those inefficiencies. And again, if you come back over here, there's a lot more you can do. So we're using invariant culture right here, but you can configure things like, well, how do you do new lines for that in that file? And then what if you want to have names that don't quite match up? You can say, hey, you're too lower for the headers. That way your capital I and ID matches a lowercase I and ID. Okay, we went even further because we had to actually give special names for them. But well, if it doesn't have a header record, there you go. That's how to do it. And here's how to match up based off index. So this is the first column. This is the second column. Instead of matching it up by name, there's how we matched up by name. You can even create a mapper class. If you don't have access to the class that you are mapping to, you can create a mapper class. So you map, okay, ID maps to lowercase ID, and name matches to name, and date of birth matches the date of birth. So that way you can pass that map in first to make sure that it maps properly. There's a lot of things they thought through in here to make sure that you knew how to write these things and read these things properly. So lots of cool things in CSV Helper. I would encourage you to check this library out. If you have to work with CSV ever, don't just try and create it manually by hand. As you see, once you get into real data sets where you have 1 million, 2 million records, you can get really bogged down with just how expensive it can be to process. But if you use a tool like CSV Helper, it can be a game changer when it comes to the efficiencies of using and working with CSV files efficiently. Okay, so that's it for this. I don't want to go too much further in depth, but I think that gets you started using CSV Helper. Let me know down in the comments if you've ever used it before, and if not, if you have a use for it. Thanks for watching, and as always, I am Tim Corey.